The quiet observer Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted her reading glasses and turned another page of her worn paperback novel. The small corner lab on Titan Research Station hummed quietly around her, filled with the soft glow of monitoring equipment that nobody else seemed to care about. While her colleagues rushed between meetings about military preparations and defensive strategies, Elena sat in her forgotten corner, surrounded by stacks of books and data screens displaying endless streams of intercepted alien signals. She had been stationed here for 3 years now, officially designated as the station's xen. In practice, she was more like a glorified data collector. The signals she monitored came from the Kythera, an alien species that had appeared at the edge of the solar system 6 months ago. Their massive ships hung in space like silent monuments, broadcasting continuous streams of mathematical patterns that made Elena's equipment sing with harmonious frequencies. "Still playing with your alien music boxes, Elena?" Commander Harrison's voice carried a note of condescension as he passed by her lab. He didn't wait for an answer, already focused on his tablet, displaying fleet positions and weapons readiness. Reports Elena had given up trying to explain that the Kythera transmissions weren't random noise. The patterns had structure, rhythm, meaning. But every time she brought her findings to the command staff, they politely thanked her and filed. Her reports away, Elena returned to her book, one ear always tuned to the gentle melodies flowing through her speakers. She had read this particular novel 17 times, but it helped her think. The story was about a lighthouse keeper who guided ships safely to shore by watching the patterns of waves and weather. Elena often felt like that lighthouse keeper, alone with knowledge that others couldn't see the value of. The Kythera signals shifted slightly, drawing her attention. Over months of listening, Elena had begun to recognize certain recurring mathematical progressions. They reminded her of musical compositions, with themes that developed and returned in variations. Today, something was different. The patterns carried an urgency she hadn't heard before, like a symphony building toward a crescendo. She pulled up her analysis software and began mapping the frequency changes. The mathematical relationships were becoming more complex, more insistent. Elena frowned, her novel forgotten as she dove deeper into the data. The aliens were trying to say something important. Across the station, Admiral Chen stood before a holographic display showing the positions of Earth's defensive fleets. "They've been sitting out there for 6 months," he said to his gathered officers. "No communication, no movement. Either they're planning something big, or they're waiting for reinforcements. Our best xenobiologists think they might be studying us," offered Dr. Martinez, the station's chief scientist, "learning our weaknesses before they attack." "What about Vasquez's signal analysis?" asked Captain Torres, the only officer who occasionally visited Elena's lab. "She thinks they're trying to communicate." Admiral Chen shook his head. "Dr. Vasquez is a smart woman, but she's been isolated too long. She's seeing patterns where none exist. Our military analysts have reviewed her data. It's just sophisticated. Sensor sweeps disguised as communication attempts." Elena wouldn't have agreed with that assessment. At that very moment, she was discovering something extraordinary in the latest signal burst. The mathematical patterns weren't random scans, they were stories. Complex narratives encoded in numerical relationships that described star systems, space-time coordinates, and something else. Something that made Elena's blood run cold. The patterns spoke of destruction. Entire star systems consumed by something the Kythera called the Void Swarm in Elena's rough translation. The aliens weren't invaders. They were refugees, fleeing from something that devoured worlds. Elena's hands trembled as she worked to decode. More of the message. The Cathara had traveled for decades to reach this corner of the galaxy. Their ships weren't warships, but evacuation vessels, carrying the survivors of multiple worlds. They had come to warn humanity about what was following them. But, as Alina pieced together the alien narrative, warning klaxons began blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors as the station's AI announced in its calm, mechanical voice, "All personnel report to emergency stations. Unknown alien vessels are accelerating toward Earth. Time to intercept. 72 hours. Alina looked up from her screens in shock. Through her lab's small viewport, she could see the Cathara ships in the distance. Their running lights were pulsing in rapid sequences, and new vessels were emerging from what Alina now realized were not warships, but massive colony ships. The aliens were moving, but not toward Earth. They were positioning themselves between Earth and something else, Commander. Harrison's voice echoed through the station's communication system. All department heads report to the command center immediately. This is not a drill. We are implementing Defense Protocol 7. Alina saved her work and stood up, her legs shaky from hours of sitting. She had to tell them what she had discovered. The Cathara weren't attacking Earth. They were trying to protect it. But as she stepped into the corridor, she realized that in 72 hours, it might not matter what the aliens intended. Earth's defensive fleets were already moving to intercept what they believed was an invasion force. The command center buzzed with activity as Alina entered. Officers hunched over tactical displays while others coordinated with Earth's military. Command, Admiral Chen stood at the center of it all, his face grim as he watched the approaching alien fleet. Admiral Alina called out, raising her voice above the controlled chaos. "I need to speak with you about the Cathara transmissions." Chen barely looked up from his displays. "Dr. Vasquez, we don't have time for signal analysis right now. We're facing a potential invasion." "That's exactly what I need to tell you about," Alina insisted. "They're not invading. They're running from something. Every alien species in history has claimed peaceful intentions." Commander Harrison interrupted. "These aliens have been watching us for months, and now they're moving toward Earth with a fleet of over 200 vessels." Alina felt frustration building in her chest. "If you would just listen to what their signals are saying." "Dr. Vasquez," Admiral Chen's voice carried finality, "your linguistic theories are interesting, but we have real intelligence from our deep space sensors. These aliens are moving in attack formation." Alina opened her mouth to argue, but the station's AI suddenly spoke over the command centers. Speakers, Admiral Chen, implementing Emergency Protocol 12. All non-essential personnel are to be evacuated to Earth immediately. Protocol 12. Chen looked confused. "I didn't authorize Protocol 12. The AI continued in its emotionless tone. "Critical communication skills required for species survival. Dr. Elena Vasquez has been designated as primary communication specialist for first contact scenarios. All other xenolinguist personnel are currently unavailable. Dr. Vasquez will remain on station to facilitate potential diplomatic contact." A stunned silence fell over the command center. Alina felt dozens of eyes turning toward her, the quiet woman from the corner lab who had just been declared essential personnel by the station's most advanced artificial intelligence. "There must be some mistake," Harrison said. "Vasquez isn't qualified for primary contact scenarios." "Negative," the AI replied. Dr. Vasquez has spent 1,247 hours analyzing Kythera communication patterns. Her comprehension rating of alien linguistic structures is 847% higher than any other station personnel. She is the only individual capable of meaningful communication. With the approaching species, Alina felt the weight of everyone's stares. For 3 years, she had been the invisible woman in the corner, overlooked and dismissed. Now, with Earth's safety hanging in the balance, she was suddenly the most important person on the station. Admiral Chen stepped toward her, his expression serious. "Dr. Vasquez, is it true? Can you communicate with them?" Alina looked around the command center at all the faces that had ignored her work for so long. She thought about the lighthouse keeper in her novel, alone with crucial knowledge that others couldn't see. She thought about the mathematical poems the Kythera had been broadcasting, stories of loss and hope that only she had bothered to learn. "Yes," she said quietly, "I can understand them. And Admiral, we need to talk. Because everything you think you know about this situation is wrong." The last hope speaks Alina stood before the main communication array, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. The command center had been cleared except for essential personnel, and every screen displayed readings from the approaching Kythera fleet. In 18 hours, they would reach Earth's orbital defense perimeter. If Alina couldn't establish meaningful contact before then, the largest space battle in human history would begin. "Dr. Vasquez," Admiral Chen said quietly, "the fate of our entire species may depend on what happens in the next few hours. Are you certain you can communicate with them?" Alina nodded, her eyes focused on the frequency analysis displays. "I've been learning their language for months without realizing it. The mathematical patterns they broadcast aren't just communication. They're cultural expressions, historical records, even poetry. The Kythera think in mathematical harmonies the way we think in words." She began adjusting the transmission array, setting it to broadcast on the specific frequencies the aliens used for complex communication. "Admiral, before I make contact, you need to understand what I discovered. The Kythera aren't invaders. They're survivors fleeing from something called the Void Swarm." "The what?" Captain Torres leaned forward, studying Elena's translation notes. "It's difficult to translate exactly," Elena explained, her fingers dancing over the controls. "The closest human concept would be a consuming darkness that devours entire star systems. The Kythera have been running from it for decades. Their ships aren't warships. They're refugee vessels carrying the last survivors of multiple worlds." Admiral Chen frowned. "If that's true, why didn't they try to communicate this months ago?" Alina paused in her preparations. "They did. Every signal they've been broadcasting has been an attempt at communication. They've been trying to warn us, to share their history, to establish peaceful contact. We just didn't know how to listen." She activated the transmission array, and the gentle hum of the Kythera language filled the command center. Alina had spent countless hours learning to recognize the mathematical relationships that formed their words, the frequency modulations that carried emotional context, the complex harmonies that built meaning. "Greetings, children of the third world circling the yellow star," Alina broadcast in carefully modulated mathematical patterns. "I am Alina, speaker for the human species. We hear your songs across the void." The response came almost instantly, a cascade of harmonious frequencies that made Alina smile despite the tension in the room. "You understand the deep mathematics. We have sung to you for many cycles, hoping to find minds that could comprehend the universal language." Alina translated for the others, They're excited that we can finally communicate. They've been trying to contact us for months. Ask them about their intentions, Admiral Chen ordered. Are they here to invade? Alina broadcast the question, though she already knew the answer. The Cathara response came as a complex mathematical poem that described fleeing darkness, seeking sanctuary, and offering alliance. They're refugees, Alina translated. Their home system was consumed by something they call the Void Swarm 3 decades ago. They've been traveling through space ever since, warning other species and seeking allies to fight against this threat. The alien transmission continued, and Elena's face grew pale as she processed the information. Admiral, they're not just warning us, the Void Swarm is following them. It will reach our galaxy within 50 years. A stunned silence filled the command center. Commander Harrison was the first to speak. How do we know they're telling the truth? This could be an elaborate deception. Alina listened to another burst of Kithara communication, then turned to the command staff. They're offering to share their sensor data, their historical records, everything they know about the Void Swarm. They want to form an alliance. What kind of alliance? Admiral Chen asked. Alina posed the question and waited for the complex mathematical response. As she translated, her voice carried growing excitement. They have advanced technology, knowledge of faster-than-light communication, energy manipulation techniques we've never dreamed of, but they lack something crucial. They lack human innovation and adaptability. What do you mean? Captain Torres asked. The Cathara are an ancient species, Alina explained. They've perfected their technology over millions of years, but that perfection has made them rigid. They think in established patterns, proven solutions. Humans think differently. We improvise, we adapt, we find new solutions to impossible problems. Another transmission arrived from the alien fleet, and Elena's translation made everyone in the command center lean forward. The deep singers among the Cathara have calculated that only by combining their knowledge with human creativity can the Void Swarm be defeated. They want to establish joint research stations, share technology, and develop new defensive strategies together. Admiral Chen stared at the displays showing the alien fleet. Can we trust them? Alina looked at the mathematical poetry flowing across her screens. The desperate hope encoded in frequency modulations. The careful precision of beings who had traveled across the galaxy, seeking allies rather than conquest. Admiral, I've been listening to their signals for months. I've heard their stories, their history, their hopes. The Cathara don't lie in mathematical language. It's impossible. The mathematical relationships that form their words make deception detectable. She turned back to the communication array. I'm going to accept their offer of alliance on behalf of humanity. Wait, Commander Harrison stepped forward. You can't make that decision. You're just a translator. Alina looked at him calmly. No, Commander. I'm the only human who can speak with them. I'm the bridge between our species, and after 3 years of being ignored while I learned their language, I understand something you don't. Sometimes the quiet person in the corner has been preparing for the most important moment of their life. She activated the transmission array and broadcast humanity's response in perfect mathematical harmony. The humans accept the alliance of the deep singers. We will combine our innovations with your wisdom to face the consuming darkness together. The Cathara response filled the command center with beautiful, complex frequencies that Alina translated with tears in her eyes. The mathematical songs of joy. The young species of the Third World will help us compose new solutions to ancient problems. Together, We will write melodies of victory across the stars. Over the following hours, Alina facilitated the most important negotiations in human history. The Cathara fleet took positions around Earth not as conquerors, but as protectors. Their massive ships shared orbital space with human vessels. And for the first time, two species began working together as equals. Alina stood in her corner lab, no longer alone. Cathara scientists worked alongside human engineers, their mathematical languages blending with human speech as they developed plans for joint research stations, combined technologies, and defensive strategies against the approaching void swarm. Admiral Chen entered her lab, his expression a mixture of gratitude and amazement. "Dr. Vasquez, I owe you an apology. We almost started a war because we didn't listen to you." Alina looked up from a display showing the first joint human-Cathara research proposals. "Admiral, for 3 years I sat in this corner, reading books and listening to alien songs that nobody thought were important. But sometimes the most crucial preparations happen in quiet moments, when nobody is watching." She gestured toward the viewport, where human and Cathara ships now moved in coordinated formations. The lighthouse keeper in my favorite novel never sought recognition. She just kept the light burning so that others could find their way safely home. That's what I did. I kept listening until the right moment came. Captain Torres approached with a datapad. "Alina, the Cathara are requesting that you head the new Joint Communication Department. You'd be responsible for facilitating cooperation between our species." Alina smiled, remembering all those lonely hours in her corner lab, all the dismissed reports and overlooked discoveries. The quiet woman who had been ignored for so long was now the most important diplomat in human history. "I accept," she said. "And Captain, I want to establish a new principle for first contact situations. Sometimes the most important voices are the quietest ones. We need to listen to the people who observe carefully and think deeply, not just the ones who speak loudest." As Alina began her new role as humanity's primary alien liaison, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. She had been sitting in the corner, quietly reading, while an entire galaxy held its breath. Now, because she had taken the time to truly listen and understand, two species would face the future together instead of destroying each other in fear. The void swarm was still coming, but humanity and the Cathara would meet it with combined strength, and it all began with a quiet woman who proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon against the unknown is patience, curiosity, and the willingness to learn something new. Asterisk.